The Paul McCartney death theory. Imagine the biggest music icon in the world dying at the height of fame, and being secretly replaced by a lookalike, one so convincing no one ever noticed. Sounds insane, right? Unless you believe the eye. Clues were hidden in plain sight, in songs, album covers, and coded messages. This is the Paul McCartney death theory, one of the most famous musical conspiracies of all time, and it starts in 1966. The year is 1966. Beatlemania is at its peak. The Beatles are untouchable, the most influential band on the planet. But according to some, everything changed on November 9th of that year. The theory goes like this. Paul McCartney had a heated argument with the rest of the band during a late-night recording session. Frustrated, he left the studio and sped off in his Aston Martin. Moments later, tragedy struck. Paul crashed and was decapitated beyond recognition. Fearing mass hysteria and a collapse of the Beatles brand, MI5 and high-level executives at EMI allegedly conspired with the surviving Beatles to cover it up. Their solution? Find a replacement. Fast. The man they found, according to believers, was William Campbell, sometimes referred to as Billy Shears, a Scottish man who had won a McCartney lookalike contest just months earlier. Plastic surgery, voice training, and months of grooming supposedly followed. By the time the Beatles released their next album, the new Paul was ready. They called him Fall, fake Paul. But John, George, and Ringo, guilt-ridden and unable to come clean, began leaving clues in their songs and album art. A breadcrumb, trail for fans to follow. Let's look at what they left behind. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 1967. This album is ground zero for Paul is Dead clues. The cover shows the Beatles surrounded by funeral flowers. A left-handed guitar, Paul's instrument, spelled out in yellow flowers, and it appears to be a funeral arrangement. A hand hovers above Paul's head, a symbol of death in many cultures. Paul wears a patch on his sleeve with the letters OPD, interpreted as officially pronounced dead, though it actually says OPP, Ontario Provincial Police. And then there's the lyric, Billy Shears. The name fans claim is Paul's stand-in. In the booklet, Paul is the only Beatle shown without shoes, a nod to burial traditions in many cultures. He is also dressed as a walrus, and in Glass Onion, John sings, "Here's another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul." In Scandinavian folklore, the walrus symbolizes death. In the song Revolution 9 played backward, fans claim to hear the phrase, "Turn me on, dead man." And in I'm So Tired, when reversed, you allegedly hear John say, "Paul is a dead man, miss him, miss him, miss him." Perhaps the most iconic, clue-filled cover, John leads, dressed in white like a preacher. Ringo follows in black like an undertaker. Paul is third, barefoot and out of step, like a corpse. George at the end is in denim like a gravedigger. Paul holds a cigarette in his right hand, but Paul was left-handed. Even the license, plate on the parked Beetle, reads 20 AIF. Paul would have been 28 if he had lived. Coincidence? Or cryptic confession? When the rumors exploded in 1969, radio stations, newspapers, and universities were flooded with questions. Paul's response. He vanished for months, sparking even more speculation, and then reappeared in a Life magazine. Interview saying, "Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I'm alive and well." But conspiracy theorists weren't satisfied. They pointed to differences in facial structure, teeth, and even ear shape between early and post-1966 Paul. Some audio analysts even claimed Paul's voice changed in subtle ways. After 66, differences in tone and pitch that couldn't be explained by age alone. So why go to such lengths? Money. The Beatles were the biggest commercial act in history. Losing Paul could have crashed the industry. Social control. In the 60s, youth culture was exploding. The Beatles were more than a band. They were a movement. Power. What better way to test mass media manipulation than by seeing if you can replace a global icon right in front of millions? Some go further, linking the theory to mind control experiments, secret societies, and even the Illuminati, claiming Paul's death was a symbolic initiation and his replacement a willing pawn. Of course, the mainstream response is clear. Paul never died. There is no foul. Experts point out that Paul's parents, wife, and close friends would have known. No forensic proof has ever confirmed a body double. Technology. Today, including facial recognition, confirms it's the same man. Even Beatles insiders, like producer George Martin, dismissed the theory as rubbish. And Paul himself has joked about it many times, including naming his 1993 live album, Paul is Live. So why, over 50 years later, does this theory still fascinate millions? Because it taps into something deeper. The fear that we've been lied to. The idea that truth can be hidden, in plain sight. And the eerie possibility that someone, somewhere, is testing just how much we'll believe, whether it's grief, fame, or just the human need to explain the unexplainable. The Paul is dead theory remains one of pop culture's most enduring mysteries. So, did Paul McCartney really die in 1966 and get replaced by a lookalike? Or is it just another bizarre conspiracy born from grief, paranoia, and pattern-seeking? Drop your theory in the comments. Hoax, truth, or brilliant marketing? Like, share, and let's keep the conversation alive. Subscribe to Dark Chapter for more deep dives into the strange, the hidden, and the unsolved. Because sometimes the truth sings in a different key.